When your presence disrupts hidden tensions, begins with a moment that at first seems ordinary, almost familiar. A family gathering is supposed to be a place of comfort, laughter, shared memories, and the quiet rhythm of people who have known one another for years. Conversations move casually around the table. Stories are exchanged, and everyone appears to be participating in the same peaceful moment. Yet beneath that calm surface, there are often emotions, histories, and unspoken tensions that have quietly accumulated over time. Many families carry unresolved disagreements, silent resentments, and complicated dynamics that remain hidden beneath politeness and routine. For years, these tensions can stay buried simply because no one wants to disturb the fragile balance that keeps the family functioning. But sometimes, all it takes is the presence of one person to shift that balance. And in many situations, that person is the chosen one. The chosen one often enters a family environment carrying a different kind of energy. They may have grown in awareness, developed independence, or begun seeing family patterns more clearly than before. Their perspective may be more honest, more direct, or simply less willing to ignore uncomfortable truths. Even when they say very little, their presence alone can disrupt the quiet agreements that kept certain issues hidden. A simple question, an observation, or even a moment of silence can cause others to feel exposed in ways they were not prepared for. What happens next can feel shocking, especially if the chosen one did not intend to create conflict. Suddenly, voices rise, old arguments return, and emotions that were buried for years begin pouring into the open. People may start blaming one another, bringing up past situations that were never fully resolved. In the middle of the chaos, it may seem as though the fight happened because of the chosen one, as though their presence somehow caused the conflict itself. But this introduction reveals a deeper truth about what is actually taking place. The chosen one did not create the tension that erupted during that gathering. The tension was already there, quietly waiting beneath the surface long before the moment arrived. What the chosen one brought into the environment was simply the catalyst that allowed those hidden dynamics to reveal themselves. And while that moment may feel uncomfortable or even painful, it often marks the beginning of something important. When silence is broken and truth begins surfacing, the family system is forced to confront realities it once tried to avoid. The chosen one becomes the unexpected mirror, reflecting what was already present but rarely acknowledged. In this way, the conflict that erupted at that family gathering was not simply an argument. It was a moment where hidden tension could no longer remain buried, and the presence of the chosen one became the spark that illuminated everything that had been quietly building beneath the surface for years. The hidden tension already inside the family begins with the realization that what appears to be a sudden explosion of conflict rarely begins in that moment. Long before the voices rise and the arguments unfold, something has already been quietly building beneath the surface of the family environment. Many families learn to operate with an unspoken rule: maintain peace by avoiding certain truths. Over time, this rule becomes part of the culture of the household. People know which topics should not be mentioned, which disagreements should remain buried, and which emotions are safer to hide than to express openly. At first, this approach can seem practical. It prevents uncomfortable confrontations and allows gatherings to remain pleasant on the surface. Yet what is rarely acknowledged is that silence does not eliminate tension. It simply stores it away, like pressure inside a sealed container. Each unresolved disagreement, each moment of favoritism, each quiet resentment adds another layer to that invisible pressure. The family may continue sharing meals together, celebrating holidays, and exchanging polite conversation. But beneath those familiar routines, the emotional weight continues growing. The chosen one often enters this environment with a different sensitivity to what is happening beneath the surface. While others may have grown accustomed to ignoring the tension, the chosen one can feel it immediately. It may appear in the way certain family members avoid eye contact with one another, or in the subtle shift of tone when specific topics are mentioned. Sometimes, the tension reveals itself through jokes that carry a sharper edge than expected, or through conversations that suddenly stop when someone walks into the room. These small signals may seem insignificant individually, but together they form a pattern that the chosen one begins to recognize. Over time, it becomes clear that the family system has been quietly managing emotional conflicts rather than resolving them. The chosen one may notice that certain relatives carry unresolved jealousy toward one another, perhaps connected to old comparisons or long-standing favoritism. Another family member may feel overlooked or misunderstood, but has chosen silence rather than risking confrontation. In other cases, disagreements about values, responsibilities, or past decisions may have created invisible divisions that everyone feels, but no one openly discusses. Each of these unresolved emotions becomes part of the atmosphere within the family. Like invisible threads stretching between people, they influence interactions in ways that remain unspoken, yet powerful. This is why family gatherings can sometimes carry a strange mixture of warmth and tension at the same time. On the surface, there may be laughter and storytelling, but beneath it, there is also caution, hesitation, and the quiet effort of individuals trying to maintain balance. The chosen one often senses this dynamic more clearly than others, because they are less invested in preserving the illusion of perfect harmony. Instead of automatically accepting the silence, the chosen one observes it with curiosity and awareness. Even when they do not speak directly about the tension, their presence can subtly shift the atmosphere. People may become slightly more guarded or unexpectedly defensive, not because the chosen one has done anything wrong, but because their awareness feels like a spotlight shining into corners that were previously kept dim. Another important aspect of hidden family tension is the way roles become established over time. Within many families, each person unconsciously adopts a certain role that helps maintain the existing balance. One person may become the peacemaker who smooths over disagreements. Another may become the authority figure whose opinions shape decisions. And another may take on the role of the quiet observer who avoids conflict entirely. These roles can continue for years without being questioned. The chosen one often disrupts this system simply by refusing to remain confined within a predetermined role. Perhaps they ask questions that challenge long-standing assumptions, or perhaps they demonstrate independence in ways that differ from family expectations. Even small shifts in behavior can create discomfort within a system that has relied on predictable roles for stability. The chosen one's authenticity becomes a mirror reflecting the unspoken dynamics that others have learned to ignore. When this happens, family members may begin reacting in ways that reveal the tension that has been quietly accumulating. A casual remark may trigger a defensive response. A simple observation may cause someone to recall an unresolved argument from years earlier. Suddenly, the emotional container that held all those silent tensions begins cracking open. The chosen one may feel surprised by the intensity of the reactions, especially if they did not intend to provoke anything dramatic. But what they are witnessing is not the creation of tension. It is the release of pressure that has been building for a very long time. This stage of the journey teaches the chosen one an important lesson about human relationships. Silence can maintain temporary peace, but it cannot resolve emotional truth. Families often rely on silence because it feels easier than confronting complicated feelings. Yet those feelings do not disappear simply because they remain unspoken. Instead, they continue influencing behavior in subtle ways until something eventually forces them into the open. The chosen one becomes that catalyst, not through aggression or confrontation, but simply through presence and awareness. By refusing to ignore the deeper dynamics, they create the conditions where hidden tensions begin revealing themselves. This process can feel uncomfortable for everyone involved. Some family members may react with anger or confusion because the familiar balance they relied on is suddenly shifting. Others may feel relief because emotions they have carried silently for years finally have a chance to be expressed. The chosen one may find themselves standing in the center of this emotional storm, wondering how such a simple gathering turned into something so intense. Yet, with time and reflection, it becomes clear that the gathering did not create the conflict. It merely revealed what had been quietly waiting beneath the surface all along. The chosen one begins understanding that families, like all human systems, evolve through moments of tension and truth. When hidden emotions are finally expressed, it can create chaos at first, but it also opens the possibility for honesty and healing that silence could never achieve. What looked like a sudden argument was actually the visible result of years of unspoken feelings finally finding their way into the open. And the chosen one, simply by standing authentically within the environment, became the spark that illuminated those hidden tensions for everyone to see. Why the chosen one often becomes the trigger gradually reveals a deeper truth about family dynamics that many people only understand after witnessing situations like the one that unfolded at that gathering. When conflict suddenly erupts and emotions spill into the open, it may appear as though one person caused everything simply by being present. Yet when we look more carefully at what actually happened, it becomes clear that the chosen one did not create the tension. Instead, their presence functioned like a spark in a room already filled with invisible pressure. The chosen one becomes the trigger not because they carry destructive energy, but because they carry clarity, authenticity, and independence in ways that challenge long-standing patterns within the family system. In many families, stability depends on a set of unspoken agreements about how people should behave, what subjects should remain untouched, and which roles each person is expected to play. These agreements may have formed slowly over years or even generations, and most family members eventually adapt to them without realizing it. Someone learns not to question certain decisions. Another learns to remain quiet about past conflicts. Others become accustomed to avoiding difficult truths because doing so keeps gatherings peaceful on the surface. The chosen one often disrupts this delicate balance simply because they do not instinctively follow those silent rules. Their personality may naturally lean toward honesty, curiosity, and independence of thought. They may ask questions that others stopped asking years ago. They may express perspectives that do not align with the familiar narrative everyone else has learned to repeat. Even when their words are calm and respectful, their authenticity introduces a kind of unpredictability into the environment. Family members who rely on established patterns may feel uneasy because they cannot easily predict how the chosen one will respond to situations that others handle through silence or conformity. This is where the tension begins shifting from hidden discomfort into visible reaction. The chosen one's presence becomes a mirror reflecting the dynamics that others have spent years avoiding. For example, if favoritism existed quietly within the family, the chosen one may notice it and respond differently than expected. If certain relatives have unresolved resentment toward one another, the chosen one's openness may unintentionally highlight that tension. A simple question such as, "Why did that happen?" or "What really went on back then?" can suddenly bring years of buried emotion back into the conversation. The chosen one may not even realize they have touched on something sensitive until the reactions begin appearing. Voices rise, defensive explanations appear, and individuals who seemed calm moments earlier suddenly react with surprising intensity. At that moment, it can feel as though the chosen one has become the cause of the argument. Some family members may even say directly that the gathering would have remained peaceful if the chosen one had not brought up certain topics or behaved differently. Yet what is actually happening beneath the surface is far more complex. The chosen one has simply illuminated tensions that were already present. By stepping outside the silent agreements that kept those tensions hidden, they unintentionally create the conditions where the truth begins surfacing. Another reason the chosen one often becomes the trigger lies in their personal growth. Many chosen ones undergo periods of transformation that change how they see themselves and the world around them. They may develop stronger boundaries, greater self-awareness, or a deeper commitment to honesty in relationships. These changes can feel empowering internally, but they may also create discomfort within a family system that expects everyone to remain in familiar roles. When the chosen one begins behaving differently, it challenges those expectations. Perhaps they no longer tolerate dismissive remarks that once went unchallenged. Perhaps they choose to speak openly about emotions or experiences that others prefer to avoid. Perhaps they simply carry themselves with a level of confidence that signals they are no longer willing to participate in unhealthy patterns. Each of these changes can disturb the equilibrium of the family environment. People who are accustomed to the old dynamic may interpret the chosen one's growth as confrontation, even when the chosen one has no intention of creating conflict. In reality, what they are reacting to is the shift in energy that occurs when someone begins living more authentically. Authenticity has a powerful effect within groups because it exposes the difference between what people truly feel and what they pretend to feel in order to maintain peace. The chosen one becomes the trigger because their authenticity makes those differences impossible to ignore. When they speak honestly, others may feel pressure to defend the narrative they have maintained for years. When they remain calm while addressing sensitive issues, it can cause those who rely on avoidance to feel exposed. Even silence from the chosen one can have this effect. Simply refusing to participate in gossip, manipulation, or denial may force others to confront their own behavior more directly than they are comfortable with. The result is that emotional reactions appear suddenly and dramatically, even though the chosen one did very little to provoke them intentionally. In many ways, the chosen one functions like a catalyst in a chemical reaction. A catalyst does not create the elements involved in the reaction. It simply allows those elements to interact in ways that reveal their true nature. The family gathering becomes the environment where that reaction occurs. Old frustrations, jealousies, misunderstandings, and resentments collide with the presence of someone who refuses to ignore them. The reaction that follows can feel chaotic, but it also reveals truths that were previously hidden beneath years of silence. The chosen one may feel overwhelmed during this moment, wondering why their presence seems to generate such strong responses from others. Yet understanding the deeper dynamics helps transform that confusion into clarity. The chosen one begins realizing that their role in the situation was never about creating conflict. It was about bringing awareness into an environment that had relied on avoidance for too long. Awareness can be uncomfortable, especially for people who have grown accustomed to keeping certain truths buried. But it is also the first step toward genuine understanding and healing. Without moments like this, families can spend decades repeating the same patterns without ever addressing the underlying emotions shaping their relationships. When the chosen one becomes the trigger for change, it does not mean they are responsible for the conflict itself. It means they have introduced a level of honesty and authenticity that the existing system was not fully prepared to handle. And while that moment may feel difficult, it also carries the potential for transformation that silence alone could never achieve. The moment the argument begins often appears to arrive suddenly, almost as if a calm atmosphere fractured without warning. Yet when the chosen one reflects on the events that unfolded during that family gathering, it becomes clear that the moment the argument began was not a random outburst, but the visible tipping point of emotions that had been quietly accumulating for years. Family gatherings are unique environments because they bring together people who share deep history with one another. Every memory, every unresolved disagreement, every unspoken expectation is present in the room, whether anyone acknowledges it or not. At the beginning of the gathering, everything may have appeared perfectly normal. Conversations flowed casually, people shared food, and the familiar rhythm of family interaction seemed to hold everything together. But beneath that surface calm, there was already a subtle tension in the air. Certain individuals may have been watching each other carefully, waiting to see how conversations unfolded. Others may have been holding back emotions that had never been fully expressed before. The chosen one may have sensed these undercurrents without immediately understanding them. Perhaps there was a moment when a topic came up and someone quickly changed the subject. Perhaps a joke was made that carried an unexpected sharpness beneath its humor. These small signals were like early tremors before a larger shift. Eventually, the moment arrives when one seemingly small interaction sets everything into motion. It may begin with a simple comment or question that touches a sensitive subject. The chosen one might ask about a past event, express an honest opinion, or respond to something in a way that differs from the family's usual pattern of silence. What makes this moment powerful is not the words themselves, but what those words represent. They break the unspoken rule that certain topics should remain untouched. Once that rule is broken, the carefully maintained balance begins unraveling quickly. Someone reacts defensively, interpreting the comment as criticism or challenge. Another person jumps in to defend their perspective, bringing up details that were never meant to be discussed openly. Voices begin rising as people try to explain themselves, each person attempting to assert their version of the truth. The chosen one may feel the shift almost immediately, sensing the emotional temperature in the room changing within seconds. Conversations that were once casual now carry urgency and intensity. Family members who were previously quiet may suddenly find themselves pulled into the discussion, either to support one side or to defend themselves against accusations. Old stories begin resurfacing, often in ways that reveal how differently each person remembers them. Someone may reference an incident from years ago that had never been resolved. Another person may reveal frustrations they have been carrying silently for a long time. As these stories emerge, the chosen one realizes that the argument is no longer about the original comment that sparked it. That comment simply opened the door for deeper emotions to enter the conversation. What unfolds next often feels overwhelming because the argument expands rapidly. One disagreement leads to another, and soon the room is filled with overlapping voices and emotions that have been waiting years to be expressed. People who once avoided conflict may suddenly speak with surprising intensity, revealing how much they have been holding inside. The chosen one may stand in the center of this moment, feeling both shocked and strangely aware of what is happening. It becomes clear that the gathering has transformed from a simple family event into a space where buried emotions are finally being voiced. At first, this can feel uncomfortable or even painful. Watching family members argue openly can create a sense of instability, especially when those arguments expose truths that had long been hidden beneath politeness. The chosen one may even wonder if they should have remained silent to prevent the situation from escalating. But as the moment continues unfolding, a deeper understanding begins emerging. The argument did not begin because of one comment or one person. It began because the emotional container holding years of unresolved tension had finally reached its limit. Once the lid came off, everything inside had to come out. In many ways, the chosen one becomes a witness to something that was destined to happen eventually. Families cannot carry unspoken emotions indefinitely without experiencing moments like this. When honesty finally enters the environment, even in a small way, it creates space for those emotions to surface. The argument becomes the visible expression of truths that had been quietly shaping the family dynamic for years. While the scene may feel chaotic in the moment, it also carries the potential for clarity that silence could never provide. For the chosen one, observing this moment often brings a mixture of realization and responsibility. You begin recognizing how deeply interconnected family relationships truly are. A single question or observation can reveal layers of history that were previously hidden. At the same time, you learn that honesty has power within environments where silence has been the norm. When someone speaks authentically, it can disrupt patterns that have remained unchanged for generations. The moment the argument begins, therefore, becomes more than just a conflict. It becomes a turning point where hidden dynamics become visible and long-suppressed emotions finally find expression. Even though the experience may feel intense, it marks the beginning of a new level of awareness within the family system. The chosen one realizes that what unfolded at that gathering was not simply an argument about a single issue. It was a release of emotional truth that had been building quietly beneath the surface for years, waiting for the moment when it could finally be seen and heard by everyone present. The deeper issues behind the conflict begins revealing itself only after the noise of the argument starts settling enough for the chosen one to observe what truly happened beneath the surface. In the heat of the moment, it may have seemed as though the conflict was about a single comment, a misunderstanding, or a disagreement that simply escalated too quickly. Yet when the chosen one reflects on the situation with greater clarity, it becomes obvious that the argument was never really about that one moment. What erupted during that gathering was the visible expression of deeper issues that had been silently shaping the family dynamic for a long time. These deeper issues often hide within ordinary interactions for years without being addressed directly. One of the most common underlying tensions within families is the quiet presence of comparison and favoritism. Sometimes, certain members receive more approval, attention, or authority than others. And while this may not always be intentional, the emotional impact can last for years. Someone may feel overlooked, misunderstood, or less valued within the family structure. Those feelings rarely disappear simply because they remain unspoken. Instead, they quietly influence how people interpret one another's actions. A small remark that might seem harmless on the surface can suddenly trigger a strong reaction because it touches a long-standing emotional wound. The chosen one may not have been aware of how deep those wounds were until the moment they were suddenly expressed in front of everyone. Another layer of deeper tension often comes from unresolved disagreements about past decisions. Families share history, and within that history, there are often moments when choices were made that affected everyone involved. Perhaps someone felt they carried more responsibility than others. Perhaps a disagreement about finances, caregiving, or family expectations was never fully resolved. These moments may have been temporarily smoothed over in order to maintain peace, but the emotions connected to them remained quietly present. Over time, they become like buried roots beneath the ground. From the outside, everything appears stable, but underneath those roots continue spreading and intertwining until one day something disturbs them and they suddenly break through the surface. When the argument erupted at the gathering, many of those buried roots began appearing in the conversation. People started referencing events from years ago, bringing up memories that had never been fully discussed before. What initially seemed like a reaction to one moment quickly revealed itself as a reaction to an entire history of unresolved feelings. Another deeper issue that often exists within family conflicts is the struggle for control and influence. In many families, certain individuals become accustomed to shaping decisions, guiding conversations, or maintaining authority within the group. This dynamic may develop naturally over time, but it can also create tension if other members begin challenging that authority or expressing independence. The chosen one often represents exactly this kind of shift. When someone within the family grows more confident, more self-aware, and less willing to follow old expectations, it can unsettle those who have relied on the previous structure. The chosen one's presence may unintentionally challenge the idea that authority belongs to only a few voices within the family. Even when the chosen one speaks calmly or simply asks questions, their independence can feel threatening to those who are used to controlling the narrative. This underlying struggle for influence may surface during the argument, as accusations about respect, loyalty, or behavior. Yet beneath those accusations lies a deeper concern about shifting power dynamics within the family. There is also often an emotional layer connected to identity and belonging. Families create shared narratives about who each person is supposed to be. Someone may be seen as the responsible one, the rebellious one, the quiet one, or the peacemaker. Over time, these identities become expectations that shape how people interact with each other. The chosen one frequently disrupts this pattern by refusing to remain confined within a fixed identity. Perhaps they have grown beyond the role the family assigned them. Perhaps they have discovered strengths or perspectives that challenge the way others have always seen them. When this happens, family members may struggle to adjust to the new reality. They may react emotionally because the familiar narrative about who the chosen one is no longer fits. The argument at the gathering may therefore reflect not only specific disagreements, but also confusion about how the family system itself is changing. In the middle of this emotional complexity, the chosen one begins noticing something important. The deeper issues behind the conflict were never created in that moment. They were already woven into the relationships long before the gathering began. The chosen one simply became the person whose presence brought those hidden dynamics into view. While this realization may initially feel overwhelming, it also brings clarity. Instead of believing that the conflict happened because of something you did wrong, you begin recognizing that the family system was already carrying unresolved tensions that needed expression. The gathering simply became the moment when those tensions could no longer remain hidden. Another important realization during this stage is that conflicts like this, while uncomfortable, can also reveal opportunities for growth within the family. When deeper issues remain buried indefinitely, relationships often become stagnant. People continue interacting according to old patterns without ever addressing the emotions shaping those interactions. When those emotions finally surface, even through argument, they create the possibility for understanding that did not exist before. The chosen one may witness family members expressing feelings they have carried silently for years. While the moment may be intense, it also allows truths to be spoken that were previously locked away. In this sense, the argument becomes more than a breakdown of communication. It becomes a moment when the hidden structure of the family dynamic becomes visible to everyone present. For the chosen one, understanding these deeper layers changes how the entire situation is interpreted. What once looked like a chaotic fight begins to appear as a revelation of long-standing emotional patterns. The chosen one learns that families, like all human systems, sometimes require moments of disruption in order to confront truths that silence has protected for too long. By simply existing authentically within the environment, the chosen one became the catalyst for that revelation. And although the experience may feel difficult in the moment, it also opens the door for a new level of awareness within the family dynamic. One where long-hidden issues finally have the opportunity to be seen, understood, and eventually healed. How the chosen one becomes the scapegoat begins unfolding in the quiet moments after the argument reaches its peak, when emotions are still heavy in the room and people begin trying to make sense of what just happened. In many family conflicts, especially those involving years of unresolved tension, there is a strong impulse among participants to simplify the situation by identifying a single cause or person responsible for the disruption. This instinct often emerges not because people are intentionally malicious, but because accepting the deeper complexity of the conflict can feel overwhelming. It is much easier for the human mind to point toward one individual and say, "This happened because of them," than it is to confront the possibility that the conflict reflects deeper patterns within the entire family system. In moments like this, the chosen one frequently becomes the person others focus on as the source of the problem. The argument may have revealed long-buried resentments, disagreements about past decisions, or frustrations that have been building quietly for years. Yet, in the immediate aftermath, those deeper issues are often set aside in favor of a simpler explanation. Someone may say that the situation would never have escalated if the chosen one had not asked a particular question or made a certain comment. Another family member might suggest that the gathering would have remained peaceful if the chosen one had simply stayed quiet or avoided certain topics. These statements can feel painful, especially when the chosen one knows that their intention was never to create conflict. Yet this dynamic reveals something important about how families sometimes protect themselves from confronting uncomfortable truths. By placing the responsibility on one individual, the group avoids examining the underlying tensions that actually caused the argument to unfold. The chosen one becomes what psychologists often describe as the scapegoat, the person who symbolically carries the weight of the conflict so that the rest of the group can maintain its familiar narrative. This process often happens subtly, sometimes even unconsciously. Family members may not realize that they are shifting the focus away from deeper issues. They simply react to the emotional discomfort created by the argument and look for the most visible explanation available. Because the chosen one was the catalyst that disrupted the silence, they become the easiest target for that explanation. Yet when the chosen one reflects carefully on the situation, it becomes clear that this reaction says more about the family system than it does about the chosen one's behavior. Scapegoating often occurs in environments where unresolved tension has accumulated for a long time. The group senses that something deeper needs to be addressed, but confronting those issues would require difficult conversations and emotional vulnerability. Blaming one person provides a temporary escape from that challenge. It allows everyone else to believe that the conflict was an isolated incident rather than a reflection of deeper patterns within the family dynamic. For the chosen one, recognizing this process is both difficult and empowering. At first, the accusations or subtle blame may feel confusing. You may replay the events in your mind, wondering whether you could have handled the situation differently. The chosen one may question whether speaking honestly or asking certain questions was a mistake. But with time and reflection, a deeper clarity begins to emerge. The conflict did not appear because one person behaved improperly. It appeared because the emotional pressure within the family had reached a point where it could no longer remain hidden. The chosen one's presence simply allowed that pressure to release itself into open conversation. Understanding this truth helps transform the emotional impact of scapegoating. Instead of carrying guilt for something you did not cause, the chosen one begins recognizing the role they played within a larger process of revelation. The argument exposed truths that had been buried beneath years of silence. And while that exposure may have been uncomfortable, It also created an opportunity for awareness that would never have existed otherwise. The chosen one learns that being the catalyst for truth often comes with temporary misunderstanding. When people are confronted with realities they have avoided for a long time, their first reaction is often to resist rather than to reflect. Over time, however, perspectives can change. Some family members may begin reconsidering what really happened during the gathering. They may recognize that the argument was not simply triggered by a single comment, but by a network of unresolved emotions that had been building quietly beneath the surface. In these moments, the chosen one's role begins appearing in a different light. Instead of being seen as the cause of the conflict, they may gradually be understood as the person whose honesty revealed deeper issues that needed attention. This shift does not always happen immediately, and sometimes it unfolds slowly as individuals process their own feelings and memories. But regardless of how others interpret the situation, the chosen one gains an important insight from the experience. Being blamed for revealing uncomfortable truths does not mean those truths were unnecessary. It simply means the environment was not yet prepared to confront them openly. The chosen one therefore learns a powerful lesson about authenticity. Living honestly within a system that relies on silence will inevitably disrupt that system. When someone speaks with clarity in an environment shaped by avoidance, their voice becomes both a mirror and a catalyst. Others may react defensively at first, but the truth that has been revealed cannot easily be hidden again. In this way, the chosen one begins understanding that scapegoating is often a temporary stage in the process of deeper awareness. The conflict may have placed them at the center of attention in an uncomfortable way, but it also illuminated the dynamics that had been shaping the family for years. Over time, that illumination can lead to conversations and reflections that gradually move the family toward greater honesty and understanding. And even if that process takes time, the chosen one can move forward with the knowledge that their authenticity played a role in bringing hidden truths into the open. The turning point of understanding begins not during the loudest part of the argument, but in the quieter moments that follow, when emotions start settling and people slowly begin reflecting on what actually happened. At first, the atmosphere after the conflict may feel tense and uncertain. Some family members might withdraw into silence, others may continue replaying the argument in their minds, and a few may still feel defensive or hurt by the words that were spoken. Yet within this emotional aftermath, something important begins taking shape. When the initial shock fades, individuals start noticing details that were not obvious in the heat of the moment. They begin remembering how the conversation unfolded, what was said before the argument escalated, and how quickly long-buried frustrations surfaced once the discussion opened certain doors. This is where the turning point of understanding slowly emerges. People start realizing that the conflict was far larger than the moment that triggered it. What seemed like a sudden fight begins revealing itself as the expression of deeper tensions that had been present within the family for years. The chosen one often becomes aware of this shift earlier than others because they had already sensed those tensions long before the gathering took place. While the argument may have felt chaotic at first, the chosen one can now observe the situation with greater clarity. You notice how family members begin speaking differently after the conflict. Someone who was defensive earlier may start acknowledging that certain issues have been avoided for too long. Another person may quietly admit that the conversation revealed feelings they had never expressed before. Even those who initially blamed the chosen one for starting the conflict may begin reconsidering their perspective as they reflect on the deeper history behind the argument. This process rarely happens instantly. Understanding unfolds gradually as people move from emotional reaction to thoughtful reflection. During this stage, the chosen one plays a unique role simply by remaining calm and grounded. While others are still processing what happened, your ability to step back and observe the larger pattern helps stabilize the situation. The chosen one does not need to argue or defend themselves aggressively, because the truth of what occurred is already becoming visible through reflection. Instead, you allow the conversation to evolve naturally as people begin recognizing that the gathering exposed issues that had long been hidden. One of the most significant realizations that often appears during this stage is the understanding that silence had never truly resolved the family's deeper conflicts. For years, many members may have believed that avoiding certain topics kept the peace. They may have convinced themselves that not discussing past disagreements was the best way to maintain harmony. Yet, the argument revealed something important. Silence can delay conflict, but it cannot eliminate the emotions that caused it in the first place. When those emotions finally surfaced during the gathering, they showed everyone that the family system had been carrying unresolved tension beneath its polite surface. This recognition becomes a turning point because it shifts the focus away from blaming individuals and toward understanding the patterns within the family dynamic. Instead of asking who caused the argument, people begin asking why those emotions had been building for so long without being addressed. This change in perspective allows the chosen one's role to be seen in a new light. Rather than being viewed as the person who disrupted the gathering, the chosen one may start appearing as the catalyst who brought hidden issues into the open. While this realization may feel uncomfortable for some family members, it also opens the possibility for genuine communication that had never existed before. When people acknowledge that the conflict revealed deeper truths, they become more willing to explore those truths instead of burying them again. Conversations may begin taking a different tone as individuals share perspectives that were once hidden behind silence. Someone might explain how a past event affected them emotionally. Another person may admit they misunderstood something that happened years earlier. These discussions may not solve every issue immediately, but they create a foundation for understanding that had previously been missing. The chosen one often senses that the emotional atmosphere is shifting during this stage. The tension that once felt explosive begins transforming into something more reflective. People speak more thoughtfully, and even those who were most upset earlier may begin listening more carefully to one another. The chosen one realizes that the argument was not simply a breakdown of communication, but the beginning of a deeper conversation that the family had avoided for too long. This realization also brings an important lesson for the chosen one personally. Moments of conflict that appear chaotic can sometimes serve as catalysts for clarity. When hidden dynamics are finally exposed, they create an opportunity to understand relationships in a way that silence never allowed. The chosen one learns that authenticity, even when it disrupts comfortable patterns, often leads to greater awareness within the environment. While not every family member may embrace this understanding immediately, the seed of reflection has already been planted. Once people recognize that the conflict revealed deeper truths, it becomes difficult to return completely to the old pattern of silence. The chosen one stands within this turning point with a sense of quiet insight. What happened during that gathering was not merely an argument about one moment or one comment. It was a moment when years of hidden tensions surfaced and forced the family to confront realities that had long remained unspoken. As understanding begins replacing blame, the family dynamic slowly starts evolving toward greater honesty and awareness, and the chosen one recognizes that their presence played an important role in opening the door to that transformation. The turning point of understanding continues unfolding as the emotional dust from the conflict slowly settles, and the family begins moving from reaction into reflection. What felt chaotic during the argument gradually transforms into a moment where people begin examining the deeper meaning behind what occurred. At first, this shift may be subtle. Someone who spoke loudly during the disagreement may later approach another family member in a quieter tone, acknowledging that certain words were spoken out of frustration rather than intention. Another person who initially blamed the chosen one may begin reconsidering their perspective after replaying the conversation in their mind. These small moments of reflection mark the beginning of a powerful transformation within the family dynamic. When emotions are no longer dominating the conversation, people start recognizing patterns that were previously hidden beneath the intensity of the argument. They begin seeing how the conflict connected to events that happened years earlier, to misunderstandings that were never clarified, and to emotional wounds that had quietly shaped their interactions for a long time. The chosen one observes this process carefully, understanding that awareness rarely arrives all at once. For many family members, the realization that deeper issues exist can feel uncomfortable at first. Accepting that long-standing tensions have been influencing relationships requires humility and honesty. Yet the conflict created an opening that silence could never provide. Once the truth begins emerging, even in fragments, it becomes difficult for people to ignore what they have seen. Gradually, the focus shifts away from the surface argument and toward the emotional history that made the argument possible in the first place. The chosen one may notice how people begin asking different kinds of questions. Instead of debating who is right or wrong during the gathering, some family members start wondering why certain subjects felt so sensitive. They begin acknowledging that particular memories still carry emotional weight, and that avoiding them has not actually resolved anything. In these moments, the chosen one's earlier observations start gaining quiet validation. The tension that was once dismissed as minor or imaginary now appears clearly within the reflections of others. This turning point also reveals something important about the nature of truth within families. Truth rarely emerges through perfectly calm conversations when emotions have been buried for years. More often, it appears during moments when the usual rules of silence break down, and people finally express what they have been holding inside. While the argument itself may have been uncomfortable, it forced hidden feelings into the open, where they could finally be seen and understood. The chosen one begins realizing that the conflict was not simply a disruption of family harmony. It was the moment when the family system confronted realities that had been quietly influencing everyone's behavior for a long time. As this understanding deepens, the chosen one also notices changes in how certain family members interact with them. People who once reacted defensively may begin speaking more openly, perhaps explaining their perspective in ways they never attempted before. Others may acknowledge that they had sensed tension in the family, but never knew how to address it. These conversations do not erase the past, but they create a new atmosphere where honesty becomes possible. The chosen one's calm presence during this stage becomes especially meaningful. By refusing to respond with anger or resentment, you demonstrate that the purpose of truth is not to destroy relationships, but to bring clarity to them. This approach allows others to reflect without feeling attacked, which encourages more genuine communication. The turning point of understanding, therefore, becomes more than a moment of realization. It becomes the beginning of a gradual shift within the family's emotional landscape. People who once relied on silence begin recognizing that avoiding difficult conversations only allowed tension to grow stronger. By acknowledging what surfaced during the argument, they open the possibility for more authentic relationships moving forward. For the chosen one, this stage offers a powerful lesson about the role authenticity plays within complex family systems. Being honest about what you see and feel can sometimes trigger conflict, especially when others are accustomed to maintaining harmony through silence. Yet authenticity also has the power to reveal truths that are necessary for growth. The chosen one understands that the argument at the gathering was not a meaningless fight. It was a moment that exposed the emotional structure beneath the family's surface. giving everyone the opportunity to see what had been hidden for years. As reflection continues spreading through the family, the chosen one recognizes that understanding often arrives slowly but steadily once the door to truth has been opened. What began as conflict now begins transforming into awareness, and within that awareness lies the potential for deeper connection and healing that silence alone could never achieve. What this moment reveals about the chosen one's role begins becoming clear only after the emotional intensity of the gathering fades and the chosen one has time to reflect on what truly took place. In the moment of conflict, it may have felt confusing, even overwhelming, to watch a simple family event suddenly transform into an argument that exposed years of buried tension. Yet with distance and reflection, the chosen one begins recognizing that the moment carried a deeper meaning than the surface conflict suggested. What happened during that gathering revealed something important, not only about the family dynamic, but also about the unique role the chosen one plays within that system. Families, like all social groups, develop patterns over time that allow them to function even when unresolved emotions exist beneath the surface. These patterns are often maintained through silence, routine, and a shared agreement not to disturb certain topics. While this approach can maintain temporary stability, it also prevents deeper issues from being addressed honestly. The chosen one often enters this environment with a different orientation toward truth. Instead of instinctively preserving the existing pattern, the chosen one carries a natural tendency to observe, question, and understand the deeper forces shaping relationships. This difference may not always be intentional. Sometimes it simply emerges from the chosen one's personal growth, their emotional awareness, or their willingness to approach difficult subjects with honesty rather than avoidance. Because of this perspective, the chosen one frequently becomes the individual whose presence disrupts the silent equilibrium that has held the family together for years. This disruption does not occur because the chosen one wishes to create conflict. In many cases, the chosen one may prefer peace just as much as everyone else. The difference is that peace built on silence often feels incomplete to someone who values authenticity. The chosen one senses when something beneath the surface is unresolved, even if others have grown accustomed to ignoring it. As a result, their words, questions, or even their calm presence can unintentionally bring hidden dynamics into view. The argument at the gathering revealed exactly this dynamic. Some may react defensively. Others may blame the chosen one for disturbing the peace, and a few may attempt to restore the old silence as quickly as possible. Yet even when resistance appears, the process of revelation has already begun. Once deeper dynamics have been exposed, it becomes much harder for the family to return completely to the previous pattern of avoidance. Over time, the chosen one may notice subtle changes in how family members interact with one another. Conversations may become slightly more honest. Certain subjects that were once considered off-limits may begin appearing in discussions with greater openness. Even those who initially reacted negatively to the conflict may start acknowledging that the gathering revealed issues that needed attention. These shifts do not always happen immediately, and they may unfold gradually as individuals reflect on their own emotions and memories. But the turning point created by the chosen one's presence continues influencing the family dynamic long after the argument itself has ended. The chosen one also learns an important lesson about the power of authenticity. When someone lives honestly within a system that relies on silence, their authenticity becomes a force for transformation. It challenges the idea that maintaining appearances is more important than understanding the truth. While this challenge may initially produce discomfort, it ultimately creates the possibility for deeper relationships based on openness rather than avoidance. The chosen one begins recognizing that their role is not about creating conflict, but about creating awareness. Awareness, even when it arrives through difficult moments, opens the door to growth that would otherwise remain impossible. As this realization settles in, the chosen one starts viewing the events of that family gathering through a new lens. Instead of seeing it as a chaotic argument caused by one person's presence, it becomes clear that the moment represented a shift within the family system itself. The silence that once kept deeper tensions hidden was interrupted, and in its place, a new level of honesty began emerging. The chosen one's presence served as the catalyst for that shift, revealing dynamics that had been shaping the family for years without being acknowledged. This understanding brings a sense of calm clarity to the chosen one's perspective. You recognize that your role within the family is not defined by the accusations or misunderstandings that may arise during moments of tension. Your role is defined by the authenticity you bring into the environment. By remaining true to your awareness and values, you create opportunities for others to see their own experiences more clearly. Even when that clarity arrives through conflict, it ultimately contributes to the possibility of deeper understanding and connection within the family. In this way, the events of that gathering reveal something profound about the chosen one's journey. What appeared to be a simple argument was actually a moment when truth began moving through a system that had long relied on silence. The chosen one stood at the center of that moment, not as the cause of the conflict, but as the presence that allowed hidden dynamics to become visible. And through that visibility, the family gained an opportunity to understand itself in ways that had never been possible before. When conflict reveals the truth, gradually brings the entire experience into focus, as the chosen one steps back from the emotional intensity of the gathering and begins understanding what that moment truly represented. At first, the argument may have seemed like a chaotic and uncomfortable disruption of what was supposed to be a peaceful family event. Voices were raised, long-buried frustrations surfaced, and relationships that once appeared stable suddenly revealed hidden tension. In the immediate aftermath, it may have felt as though the conflict happened because of one person's presence, and the chosen one may even have wondered whether something different could have been said or done to avoid the situation entirely. Yet with time and reflection, a deeper perspective begins emerging. What happened during that gathering was not the creation of a problem, but the revelation of one. The tension that erupted did not appear suddenly in that moment. It had been quietly forming within the family dynamic for years, shaped by unspoken disagreements, unresolved emotions, and patterns of silence that prevented honest communication. The chosen one simply became the catalyst who unintentionally illuminated those hidden dynamics. Once the silence surrounding those issues was broken, the emotional pressure that had been building beneath the surface could no longer remain contained. While the conflict may have felt uncomfortable, it also created an opportunity that had not existed before. The opportunity for truth to appear within a system that had long relied on avoidance to maintain peace. The chosen one begins recognizing that their presence in that moment carried a purpose beyond the argument itself. By responding authentically rather than conforming to the familiar pattern of silence, they introduced a level of honesty into the environment that revealed deeper truths about the family dynamic. This honesty may have triggered strong reactions at first, but it also opened the door for reflection and understanding that silence alone could never achieve. Over time, some family members may begin acknowledging that the argument exposed issues that had needed attention for years. Others may quietly reconsider their own perspectives as they reflect on what was said during the gathering. Even if those realizations unfold gradually, the moment of truth created by the conflict cannot easily be erased. The chosen one therefore learns an important lesson about authenticity and courage. Living honestly within environments that depend on silence will sometimes create tension. But that tension often reveals realities that need to be understood before true harmony can exist. Authenticity may disturb the appearance of peace, but it also lays the foundation for relationships built on greater clarity and mutual understanding. The chosen one does not need to carry guilt for the emotions that surfaced during the gathering, because those emotions were already present long before the moment arrived. Instead, they can recognize that their presence played a role in revealing the deeper dynamics shaping the family's relationships. What began as a conflict ultimately became a moment of truth, showing everyone involved that unresolved tensions cannot remain hidden forever. And as the chosen one moves forward with this understanding, they carry the quiet knowledge that authenticity, even when it disrupts familiar patterns, has the power to illuminate truths that lead to growth, awareness, and the possibility of deeper connection within the family.